when it comes to recruitment. I'm delighted to welcome Donogh O'Brien to the You and Your Business studio. Hi, Donogh.
Hello, Alec. Great to be talking with you again.
Yeah, great. And all the way from sunny Scotland.
Exactly. Yeah, the west coast of Scotland to the west coast of Ireland.
Great stuff. I'm going to take you back to your last year in school. And I'm just wondering, from our listeners' point of view, were you the academic? Were you the person who wanted to travel the world, or had you any sort of plan in place?
Yes, in fact, my plan was all mapped out for me. So I grew up in an Irish family that left in the 60s, came to England as they did. And my dad's business was a dentist. And so I was all mapped out to do that. And as of the last year of school, that was the map. So everything else was put on the back burner.
Right. Okay. It sounds like a plan, and you had family involved. So there was a lot of encouragement there. Did it work out like that?
No, I hit a fork in the road at that pivotal time. I found studying tricky. Scoring highly was a pressure, and I think a little bit of illness and a little bit of anxiety meant my performance wasn't optimal. So I had a fork in the road decision to make in the summer of 1986.
All right. So fork in the road decision to make. So what did you do?
Well, I took myself off with my best friend to Trinidad, of all places. We spent the summer there, and came back to get my results. And my sister picked me up from the airport, as she would, Orla. Thanks, Orla, for the question. Do you want to look down in the mouth for the next 50 years? Was the question.
Love that.
So that got me thinking, and I decided to explore a different avenue. So I took another option, which meant that all that pre-planned first 18 years of my life, it changed. And so I was riding what turned out to be a roller coaster or bucking bronco since then, in terms of options and opportunities coming along.
I thought your choice of university that you moved on to next was quite interesting, because we can use the course in two different ways.
Thanks, Alec, for reminding me of that. Yes, being in the family, we were a golfing family. So you either played golf or you stayed at home. So I was privileged to be a member of a great golf course next to what turns out to be a great university. So one day I was driving along thinking about my sister's question, and we popped into the university called Royal Holloway in Surrey, just outside of London, on my way to a great golf course nearby. Popped in and looked at the options that would suit the qualifications I had, because of the proximity to the golf course, and the university had a great golf team, which I would get automatic pick on, which all looked like the stars were aligning at that point.
Fantastic. So you were to spend a number of years there, but the two subjects you picked I thought were quite interesting.
Thanks, Alec. Yeah. So it turned out that I could get automatic entry, and if I did chemistry with management. Now, chemistry was the last of the subjects I thought I would do at university, but it turned out to be very relevant. I was good at the sciences, because you do if you're going to follow a medical line, and management. I was very interested. I was inspired by family relatives who were successful in business about some interesting points. So I had a budding desire to be creative through business. So that's why I chose that subject. I thought it would be really interesting, and it was.
All right. So coming out of that with chemistry and management, you were about to take a particular direction. Tell us about that.
Thanks, Alec. And as part of that 4-year degree, I got to work in industry for a year, ICI. So when I got to the end of it with my BSc in my hand, I thought, what do I do next? And I'm reminded of the question I asked the lecturer 4 years prior: what do people do with chemistry and management? To which he answered, a lot of people become an accountant. So I said that won't be me in 1986, but in 1990, it was a very relevant way to go forward. I'd scored well in the management studies. Accountancy was part of the remit in the final year, done well. And everyone told me then, accountancy is a brilliant way to understand and learn about business. And so I took that path.
It's interesting. So you've abandoned the science part and now moved towards management. Obviously, you had, as we'd say here, a grow for it. So, okay, cool. Where are we off to next?
Well, yeah, I abandoned the science because during my year working at ICI, research and development, I found that I didn't really relate to wearing a lab coat and lab glasses every day. I wasn't really interested. It felt a bit claustrophobic. I wanted to be out there in the hustle and bustle of business. That went really well for that year in industry. So I did feel working with people in a professional service environment was basically the path that will reappear in the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing how you've suddenly taken an interest in a particular area. So, okay, so accountancy, you obviously have the knack of being able to study and complete these sort of degrees. So you've become an accountant.
Yeah, well, I did. Yeah, for 5 years I was an accountant, but every time I considered escaping the accountancy, the path of recruitment was put in front of me, and I thought, I don't want to be a recruitment guy. Surely that's all about sales. That's a sales job. That was what my perception of recruitment was back then. So I kept going with the accountancy and worked in the world of investment management with an accountancy hat on. So I was very, very interested in the professional service arena of accountancy. I was very interested in working with people, very interested in investments, but maybe pressing calculators all day long wasn't quite for me at that point.
Yes, and you had sometime just previous to that, had some inspirational words from an uncle in Cork who had been quite a successful business person.
Yeah, thank you. The tartan I wear, so I'm living in Scotland, and you wear a kilt if you go to a black tie event. And the tartan I wear is one of the County Cork, because obviously that is where the double O'Brien comes from. The O'Brien on my mother's side and the O'Brien on my father's side makes me a double O'Brien, which is unique. And the uncle in Cork, he was one who went off to Canada and was very, very successful in the property real estate industry. He developed towns and houses from the center of Toronto, from leaving Cork as a Munster rugby player in the late 50s, early 60s, and became a personality in Toronto. But he did say one thing to me, and the professional way of saying it was, I make quite a lot of money out of doing something I enjoy doing. So I'm retired. So he was 38, making good money. He said it in a way that's probably not for the listeners today, but he said it in an Irish Canadian accent, and he really inspired a comment in me that says, if you're doing what you enjoy doing, you're effectively retired if you can make a living out of it. So that inspired me.
I think that's a valuable lesson for all the listeners out there, because so many people live lives of quiet desperation. So anyway, you found your way into the world of recruitment. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And if you're just joining me now, my guest today is Donogh O'Brien, and we're having a chat on you and your business on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Let's follow on from the recruitment piece. So tell me more. You got into that. You thought it was sales, however.
Yes. So as I describe it now, I'm an escaped accountant. So I escaped the calculators, and what it turned out was I enjoyed people. I didn't have the personality to be an accountant. I enjoyed the professional services, and I network with all professions these days. But working with people was my thing. And up until that point, I had the opportunity to try some network marketing, which was a budding entrepreneurial environment, and I got exposed to some networks and really, really enjoyed it. But it became more of a hobby in the end. I wasn't making the living out of it, but I was getting a great life experience. So I really enjoyed networking. And it turned out that recruitment is about networking and relationships.
Sure.
And obviously back in the late 90s, we didn't have the internet quite to the level we have now. So at that point, it was all about relationships.
And that's interesting, because there's a theme here. Certainly golf has always been regarded as one of the best networking arenas if you want to get out there. So obviously being a keen golfer, that would have been, I suppose, the inspiration, and then network marketing. So as you said, the importance of building relationships, which I think has been lost on so many people these days.
It's a great point you make, Alec, because my life was mapped out for me. By 1986, I was supposed to be a dentist. And so being quite shy at that point was okay, because you're going to look down in the mouth and people weren't really going to respond. So personality wasn't really an issue. But as life went on, the network marketing exposed me to, well, you need to get out there to make things happen. If you're going to make business happen, you need to demonstrate your interest in people. And if you're shy, that can be quite tricky.
Sure.
But so that decade of life learning post school was very, very interesting when I look back on it. But so I moved into the world of recruitment, and networking was successful because actually what I thought was going to be a quick career change for a period of time, a stopgap, well, that was 25 years ago. So clearly it's a sector that has worked out for me. But it was an opportunity that I grabbed at that point.
Well, it's interesting because, again, if I go back to the golf analogy, and I'm presuming you still play some golf, or do you?
I do. Yes, I do. I dabble a little bit. I'm always trying to reach my potential there. Thank you.
Great. But golfing, I mean, you are with a captive audience for, the best part of 4 hours. So you can't walk around without connecting with people and building relationships.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So some of my most esteemed relationships now are social through golf or business through golf. So, going back to my uncle's expression, if I'm networking on the golf course, I am retired, because I am enjoying a 4-hour walk, struggling to get that ball in the hole 18 times, do it reasonably well. But at the end of it, it's all about relationships, and it's a low pressure, high value spend of time.
In terms of recruitment, you did spot a niche, however, because recruitment agencies, I suppose, back then weren't as niche focused as they are today. But you actually spotted a niche in terms of recruitment. Tell us a bit more about that.
Thanks, Alec. It turned out I was working in transactional recruitment, and for many years I didn't realize that executive search and headhunting was actually a relationship business. I thought it was a black art at that point in time. Back in the 80s and 90s, everybody will know the comedy sketches and the big long lunches. That wasn't for me, because I wasn't really into that kind of thing. I'm more authentic than that. But I found that executive search was actually a higher level, higher value relationship, because in the management triangle, you moved right up to the strategic levels, where the leaders of the business are obviously at the top of the decision-making tree in any organization.
Right, and golf would have played a very nice part of that, I'd imagine.
Yes, it did. It did. In public sector austerity put a little bit of a spanner in the works, because entertaining people on the golf course was not the thing to do to win contracts, but it was a great place to have relationships. And so although it didn't play the feature I might have liked, because I moved more into a public sector direction, but it still played a great role, because when you've got a relationship, you're actually playing golf with a friend and a client at the same time. It's the same thing.
Yeah, fantastic. You did get an opportunity to work with one of the leading recruitment agencies.
Yes, thank you. My first 8 years, I worked with Reed Executive, which was a national treasure that was a family business. That's what kept me there for the 8 years. It was a great company to get great grounding. They focused on training and development, and but ultimately it was centered in London. The headquarters of businesses centered in London are great if you are happy to work in England as a top priority. But as you can probably tell, I've got a Celtic vibe about my heritage, and the company that I now am a partner in is very Celtic in its vibe. We do business all over the world, but we wanted to be based in Scotland, and that's where our headquarters are. A lot of our competitors are headquartered in London, and they have a slightly different rule book and price plan, but we're all about authentic relationships, and that is what executive search is about, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, so the offering you then had, you've moved to Scotland. Great. I'm sure you were having to commute to London on a regular basis, but this wasn't going to last forever.
Correct. Yes. So sometimes you have to do what you have to do to move up the learning tree to get the toolkits you need. You have to put yourself out, and that coming from an Irish diaspora, everyone would relate to the fact that you have to move around the world if you need to in order to get the skills that I thank my Irish heritage for. Coming to Scotland with its Celtic vibe about it was an interesting move. I haven't quite worked that out yet. I don't have any links to Scotland going back hundreds of years other than Ireland, but the relationship side of it was more authentic in Scotland than I felt it was in London at that point in time.
You found yourself involved in the sort of top echelon of recruitment, which is executive level. Tell me how you found your way into that sort of role.
Yeah, you've reminded me of the power of a cup of coffee, Alec.
All right.
Yeah. The power of a lot of my friends that might be listening today will relate to this. And coffee is a great way. It's like golf. It's obviously a way you can spend 45 minutes with somebody. Coffee. Back in 2005, at that point in time, I hit a fork in the road again. Life threw some curveballs and some milestones and some opportunities, but it all came to 2005, where my first child was born, and there were a number of setbacks in the family. But I had a cup of coffee with a guy called Kenny Dalglish. Now, I know some of you will be thinking of the Celtic football player here, but it's the other Kenny Dalglish, who founded a company that was highly respected for executive search in Scotland. And we had a kindred spirit. We both worked as escaped accountants. We both focused on the authenticity of relationships, investment appraisal of people at the pivotal time. So that cup of coffee went on for 3 hours. A job offer followed, and I moved to join a company which then we grew together, the public sector arm of that company, during the in the build up to the banking crisis that was going on in the private sector.
Sure. And if you're just joining me now, my guest today is Donogh O'Brien, and you are listening to You and Your Business on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Okay, Kenny Dalglish, not the footballer. You've now formed a relationship, and obviously one of those relationships we often come across in life, or sorry, I should say seldom come across in life, that you just struck it something.
Yeah, the magic came from that cup of coffee, and so as life's evolved, Ken and I set up a company called Aspen People. We've just hit our 10th year in business. So in 2011, we set up a company called Aspen. It was a spin out of the previous company. The previous company had two really strengths. One in I suppose construction, infrastructure, oil and gas, and very much a private sector angle. And the other strength was what we founded together and built, was a real strength across health, education, government, charities. And that became the reason to change, because at that point, austerity was kicking in. The public sector were wanting a lot more for a lot less. And we were quite humble. And we were really enjoying what we were delivering. We had built up a decade of really strong relationships. People wanted to do business with us because of our authenticity. And that is the reason we set it up from humble beginnings. I was joined by one of my Irish colleagues called Katrina Mackey from Tullamore. She came in as just before the spin out. And so she's also a director, and we then bought a small company, and a fourth director joined us shortly after our setup. So there are 4 founding partners, and as the time's gone on, Ken has moved to a non-exec now because he's moved on to do other things as well as be a shareholder of Aspen, but he's not active in the business as of today.
There's a nice challenge, because so many people wonder how you can bring 4 people together and the dynamic of that without it all going to pieces on you. What would you say the success around that relationship has been?
I think it goes back to the beauty was Ken gave me the opportunity to lead a brand proposition. So Aspen wasn't something we thought of. We hired a brand expert, and I was given the mandate to make that happen. So with no real marketing experience, I networked with the Chamber of Commerce, or the chief executive of the Chamber of Commerce in Glasgow, recommended a number of people, and one company really struck a chord. And when we developed the brand Aspen and what it stood for, that was a magical moment. And there was one photo in the George Square, which is the center of Glasgow, one photo that was captured and put into the media at the time, which really captured the magic. It was like an Abbey Road style picture where we're on the move. You can see the excitement in our eyes and the apprehension of starting business for the first time. You can see the apprehension of Ken having founded a company that was highly respected and changed the brand. Is the phone going to ring? Are they going to, is the previous brand, can we walk away from that? So that point in time, I look back as fondly, and I think the magic was in that brand essence that was created from that moment.
I think that's a very valuable lesson. As somebody who's a managing partner of a design and branding company for more than 25 years, I fully respect that somebody like yourself saw the true value of bringing in experts to put in the foundations of what was going to be a successful business.
Yeah, I'm really pleased you respect that too, because I didn't know the power of that. In fact, to give Ken credit, he at a board meeting, sort of within 6 months, he highly recognized that was regarded as one of our major success milestones at that point in time when we were starting up. And I look back and it's still really rigorously there, because our previous colleagues at the previous company didn't do the same, and they don't exist anymore. Unfortunately, they didn't put the same power into the brand. Just while we're on the subject, in the pandemic, we reinvested in the brand at a really difficult time when people were cutting back, including ourselves. We were worried about the future. We looked again at our brand, but this time in the digital space. And that investment decision wasn't taken lightly when the business was light. It wasn't taken lightly, but it has proved part of the bounce back strategy, and it's really given us some real momentum in the last 6 months.
And I think that's, again, another very important lesson for people. As you said, in terms of where there's a seismic shift in business, people tend to start rowing back very quickly on any sort of spend on keeping their brand in place. But you recognize that there was an investment needed and it would come back to pay you.
Well, interesting point of observation is of the 4 directors, 3 of us are escaped accountants. So we were very reluctant to spend. So investing was a huge achievement for escaped accountants, and I'm really glad we did it.
Well, I think if we can find 3 accountants ready to invest in branding and marketing, I think that's a success and could be a great lesson for everybody here. Take me on in terms of, because obviously the world has changed in terms of technology, and certainly a decade or maybe even less. How have you managed to keep abreast of technology and use it to keep your business fresh?
I think the power of networking has been very helpful to me, because it's an on-the-job learning experience. No one's ever really trained me beyond those early days of the basics of recruitment. And by networking in the Chamber network, in the Institute of Directors network, in the various national and local networks, I have learnt. They even describe them as lunch and learns, when an expert comes in and talks to you. And in this digital space, since the pandemic, the power of Zoom, the power of knowledge. I mean, we met Alec through digital space. I haven't been in Ireland for a good few years, but some of my greatest learnings in the last 2 years have come from colleagues in Ireland who are going through the similar experiences. And I think the power of learning from people that you don't know in your own network has been helpful and therapeutic in the learning.
I suppose in the last sort of 2 minutes we've got, tell me just what you're doing at the moment, where people can contact you, and the importance of finding the right people for your organization. There's a big ask for you in 2 minutes.
Thanks, Alec. Well, aspenpeople.co.uk is our website. You can log on there. Anyone who is an aspiring leader can log on there, and opportunities can come to them through that. LinkedIn is a powerful place to hear about what we're doing. We share intellect knowledge. We work with other colleagues in business, and we share best practice about consultancy and preparation for interviews. And so we help people get ready to compete, the psychology of competition. I've taken it from the golf course. I've applied it into the methodology where we help people optimize their performance to get the greatest outcome. And on the client side, they get a great return on investment because they're choosing between a win and a win.